in a panic because its illogical Brexit talks strategy is not working, says Tory MEP. Brussels has been thrown into a panic because its attempts to force Britain into backing down in the Brexit negotiations are not working, a senior Tory MEP said today. David Campbell Bannerman told Express.co.uk the bloc's phased negotiating approach, which rules out all trade talks until after the divorce is settled, is illogical and unreasonable. He accused the bloc of acting on emotion rather rationale and said its obvious attempts to punish Britain to stop other countries from leaving won't wash with ordinary voters. On the state of the talks, he said, "I think what's happening is they are beginning to panic. This isn't working, we're actually pushing them up against the deadline they imposed." Mr. Campbell Bannerman also raised the prospect that the EU's approach to the negotiations may be unconstitutional, pointing out that Article 50 clearly binds the bloc to discuss a future partnership with departing member states. The veteran Eurosceptic made the intervention after EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier caused a stir with remarks he made at a conference in Italy, in which he said the UK needed to be educated by Brexit. The Frenchman later insisted his comments had been misinterpreted and that he merely meant the painful process of the divorce would show both Britons and Europeans the value of the project. He has previously made similar remarks as well as talking repeatedly about the consequences of the leave vote, rhetoric Mr. Campbell Bannerman said was all part of a consistent punishment narrative. The Tory MEP said, "It's kind of consistent, it's all about punishing us for escaping. This is why we need to be educated about leaving the single market, it's because Britain needs to be punished for leaving. It's very illogical. It's kind of emotive, because Britain is the largest trading partner of the EU 27. It's very bad economics to try and punish or upset your largest customer. There's no economic logic, it's a political logic that we can't have the Dutch or the Danish following suit after Britain. That it must be spelled out to the rest of the world, and I just don't think it washes." Mr. Campbell Bannerman, who sits on the EU Parliament's International Trade Committee, said that the CETA deal he helped broker with Canada gave that country 99% single market access. He pointed out that Ottawa has not had to accept freedom of movement or budget contributions to secure such a free trade deal, and added he thought Britain could do even better and get a Super Canada agreement. The Tory MEP also said the government is not good enough at publicising how strong our position is and the fact that the EU wants access to the UK market. He mused, "It's almost like the EU are doing us a huge favour." And he warned the bloc if its negotiating strategy causes a no-deal scenario, Europe will be hit hardest, citing Civitas research which said EU nations would face £13 billion a year in tariffs, twice the figure for UK exporters. He said, "It shows a blinkered thinking which could lead to disaster for the EU. If they lose their biggest customer and one of their largest net contributors in one go, it's going to be very damaging. It's delusional. The whole game plan is pretty crude and obvious. They want the cash, they are bankrupt allegedly, so they want to get the cash settlement first. We're almost buying a trade deal, but we have to put the cash on the table first." He added, "I just don't think it's hugely viable or acceptable to do it that way. This is what's holding everything up. It's incredible and unreasonable and it just doesn't make sense." Finally, Mr. Campbell Bannerman said the EU's entire negotiating strategy may be unconstitutional under its own law because it could be deemed it does not respect the provisions laid out in Article 50. He said, "By deliberately delinking trade from the other agreements you're not actually fulfilling what Article 50 says, so I'd argue it's illegal and unconstitutional." Article 50 states, "In the light of the guidelines provided by the European Council, the Union shall negotiate and conclude an agreement with that state, setting out the arrangements for its withdrawal, taking account of the framework for its future relationship with the Union." The EU Council's guidelines, adopted in March this year, state that the talks should be conducted in two phases. The first covers the technical divorce, including citizens' rights, the Brexit bill and Ireland. Only once sufficient progress has been made on these issues, something which can only be judged by the EU 27, can discussions begin on a future partnership including trading arrangements.